Welcome back to unDUBBED, where we are unscripted, uncensored, and undeniably data. I'm Fiona.
And I'm Sarah. And if you're new here, this is the show where we get behind the dashboards and into the humans, the craft, and the chaos behind the data stories.
But before we dive in, do all the good data karma things like pump the algos with a like, subscribe, and go ahead and share this episode with your data friends. It genuinely helps more of the community find conversations like this.
Today, we are celebrating 10 years of the Flerlage Twins' journey together in the Tableau #DataFam community. From one early blog post about big data and asking better questions, through to Tableau Visionary Hall of Fame status, and a library of resources that pretty much every Tableau user has touched at some point.
Our guests are the infamous Ken and Kevin. They run the Flerlage Twins blog, which has over 450 blogs in the archive spanning from 2015 through to 2025. That's actually 451 posts as at December 2025, to be precise.
Between them, they've got decades in analytics. They're Tableau evangelists and consultants at Moxie Analytics. And they're both long-time Tableau visionaries as members of the Tableau Visionary Hall of Fame. Ken inducted in 2023 and Kevin inducted in 2025.
They are genuine crowd favourites, two of the most favoured authors. Kevin at number 3 and Ken at number 4. I'm sure there's a bit of family discussion over the Christmas dinner table about that on Tableau Public, regularly packing out Tableau conference sessions like how to do cool stuff in Tableau, and described in community write-ups as having a legion of fans following them around TC, like data rock stars.
And their work is everywhere. I mean, who hasn't used something from the Beyond Show Me series or grabbed a template when you've desperately needed one? They've also given us DataFam colors, that game-changing post on transparent color hex code. I know we've used that a few times. And one of my personal favorites, the Tableau chart catalog with over 100 different chart types. Their stuff is just woven into how we all work.
Well, that was a pretty full intro. Ken, Kevin, welcome to unDUBBED.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
With you both working in the Tableau space for so long now, it's really easy to stack up all of those amazing blog posts with over 451. That's a really incredible, outstanding achievement. And from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure that many of your legion of fans from the community as well, we're also grateful for everything that you do. And we just really genuinely wanted to say thank you for the amazing 10 years and have a bit of a look back at some of that content and find out a little bit of your secret sauce.
Sounds exciting. Look back. Oh, yeah, we've never done that on a podcast before. So cool.
Awesome. All right. So let's get started with the big picture. When you zoom out over roughly the last decade, from Ken's first 2015 blog, the question is the question, right through to both of you sitting here as Hall of Fame visionaries, I'm curious to hear from both of you. Tell us what stands out most about that journey. You know, are there any inflection points or things where it was like everything changed here that come to mind?
I mean, I think there's a couple of those. You know, I started before Kevin, and you know, the first blog I wrote, it had nothing. I mean, most of the, Kevin, what's the numbers? There's something like probably 400.
You said 451 is what
451, yeah.
And how many of them, 95 at least % of them are very focused on Tableau, right? But
probably more.
When I first was writing, you know, I worked in analytics before I discovered Tableau, and I was first wrote that, you know, first few blogs, I wasn't working with Tableau, but, you know, sort of discovering Tableau. And I talk about this a lot, you know, when I've done presentations and written, you know, you mentioned Beyond Show Me, that sort of realization at one point that this is just this sort of canvas, this palette with X and Y coordinates, and you could sort of build anything in the world. I think that was one of those big inflection points that was like, oh, okay, I'm in, right? This is the tool for me. This is the thing I want to keep doing. And that's what kind of led to so many of the blogs, at least for that middle period, just a lot of experimental things, all the stuff with Sankey's and anything curvy was all sort of that. And that, that was one sort of thing that's just like, whoa, look at the great things we can do here. And then I think the second big one was me and Kevin. Originally, Kevin started his own blog. We had kevinflerlage.com and we had kenflerlage.com. And we would get messages saying, hey, I think you wrote a blog about this. No, that's on Kevin's blog. And we were just like, why are we doing this? Right. So that sort of merging of the blogs into one and just having one place for all of that content, I think was another big thing where and that was the first time where we sort of just like teamed up as well. And and that's been, what was that, 2018, 19? Yeah. Yep. And we've kind of teamed up both on the blog as well as work over that last, almost 8 years or so. Right. So, I think for me, those are the big points. I don't know, Kev, you have anything to add there?
I remember when I first started, when the kind of the story was, Ken had been doing this for a while. All I did was make fun of him for it, have fun at your nerd conference. Like, I didn't get it. So he's like, you just let me know when you want to learn, whatever. And so I guess about a year and a half in, Ken became what was then called a Zen master. I'm like, hey, that's really cool. And then at work, I was doing this grinded out in Excel analytics. I was looking for my next job. I worked for a huge company and I started looking for their analytics listings. And guess what line item was on every single one of them? Tableau was, and so I'm all right, it's time for me to learn. So Ken, I texted Ken, I said, all right, I think it's time for me to learn Tableau. And Ken texted me back, check out this training session from Matt Francis. And I'm like, I have a Tableau Zen Master identical twin brother, and Ken wants me to buy a great video from Matt Francis. I did end up buying it and watching it. But I'm like, why don't you teach me? But I think it was this really, I think a lot of people that go from Excel into Tableau go, oh my gosh, this is, we were creating we created a bar chart in 3 seconds, right? It was just so much easier to do, so much more flexible. I love building charts in Tableau. I hate doing it in Excel. It's very, very frustrating. So for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is easy. And then if I have to talk about anything else, you said hashtag, data fam. Have you ever worked with another software package where you had this group of people that were so willing to help? You could reach, I was 2 months doing this and sending messages to Jeff Schaefer, who was sending messages back on how to do X, Y, Z. It was like, this community is so giving and willing to help each other out. Never seen anything like that. So that for me was like, I'm all in. No more calling Tableau conference a nerd conference. I was 100% in one of those nerds with everybody else.
One of the nerds. So, yeah. One of us.
Yeah.
Hey, the thing that stands out to me about what both of you are saying is just the impact that we can have on other people as well. It's a great reminder to think about how you can encourage other people and give them that support and cheer them on. And it can really be life-changing.
Yeah. And I think like my first memory of both of you was really around just the amount of information you were getting out there. Like I always laughed that there wasn't just 2 of you, there was probably like 4 or 8 of you, because the amount of content and the quality in which it was put out. And I think it was you, Kevin, did a visualization. I was just trying to find it, but I couldn't, on, is it like drunk drivers or something?
Yeah.
And I remember looking at that one and just going, it was a visual masterpiece. And it was one of the first times that I'd seen, someone really use other tools as well. So look at using, I think you were doing it all in PowerPoint at the
use
time,
PowerPoint.
but all the backgrounds
Still do.
and
Still
leaning
do,
into
yeah.
that. Yeah. You still do?
Yeah, I still do. Yeah, can do. Yeah.
You use
I
what
use
you know?
PowerPoint for all our clients, but we don't do a lot of background stuff. But yeah, I still use PowerPoint and don't use Figma or anything like that. But well, thank you. That's very, very kind of you.
Yeah. And I want to know, Kevin, do you have a graphic design background at all, or is this just something that comes naturally to you?
No, we've told the story, and we got a blog post on design. But we tell the story about when Ken and I were kids. We'll say 9 years old. We would sit in our rooms all day. That was long before cell phones and all that, right? We were outside most of the time, but when we were inside, we were drawing. So we would sit there and draw pictures of transformers and I would say mad balls. If anybody knows what mad balls are, it's showing our age, but we would just draw all the time. So in that blog post, we have a picture of, I think, Ken of Mickey Mouse or something, and me of Pinocchio, and it was just like a passion of ours. So I think we had something we inherited from our father, this artistic ability. But no like graphic design training or anything like that. I think just kind of figured it out over time. We did do it, both are pretty artistic, able to draw, but that's kind of the extent of it.
I also think it's a hard skill to teach, but it is definitely learnable. And I think it's just another, to go back to the community. A lot of the things that we do in, Tableau workbooks for fun are things that we're borrowing from other people. I mean, how many times, Kev, do you go back and look at something Kumar created or Ellen Blackburn?
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two that popped to my mind immediately. Just, Ellen, particularly when you talk about, even Ellen and Pradeep when it's talking about business dashboards, right? Just going and just sort of saying, okay, what did they do here? Oh, that looks good. Let's borrow that, right? So much of it is, again, just sort of learned from engaging with people that are doing similar stuff, and not even just necessarily, people in the Tableau world, right? I mean, you can go out and just, look at Pinterest boards or whatever and get, inspiration on these things, right? So I think those are important resources as well when it comes to, these design skills.
And to piggyback on that, you touched on it, but you didn't really dig into it, is, we both, I think, are artistically inclined, and there's a lot of people that aren't, and they show this fear of not being able to become a good designer. Well, obviously dashboard design is totally different than drawing, right? There's a lot more to it. But when we're talking about aesthetics in general, this stuff can 100% be learned. And I've seen people do this. One of my favorite examples is, and I hope this doesn't offend him in any way, I hope this is a positive thing, but Brian Moore. If you go look at Brian, one of the absolute best out there, perennial Iron Viz threat, like he's really, really, really good at this stuff. But go look at his Tableau Public portfolio. And when he first started, he was very text heavy, very little padding, lots of borders. And I think if you look at his Tableau Public portfolio chronologically, you see this huge development in his design skills from, we'll say, average. Brian, sorry, I hope this, like I said, doesn't offend you, but average to top 5 in the world. You know what I mean? So I think this is possible. So for anybody that thinks, hey, I'm not artistic, I don't have the graphic design background, you can learn this. You just by practicing and emulating what you're seeing from other people. And that's all we did. I love our community. It's amazing.
I think in addition to the amazing design, I also want to acknowledge you guys have a knack of getting into the maths behind things as well. And that's quite unique because people tend to go in one direction, very good at maths, or in another direction, very good at design. But having both really, I think, lends to the amazing designs that come back through. But similarly, Brian Moore, that you brought up, we had him recently on the podcast for an Iron Viz review, and his latest submission,
It's amazing.
it's amazing. It's amazing for many reasons. Beautiful design, beautiful thoughts around color and how to switch and change through things. But then he's gone into this incredible thing where instead of designing the background in Figma, he's actually designed it in Tableau and using another sheet as well. So again, a lot of calculations and understanding how that sort of thing goes on. But it really brings to light and shines a light on, someone who's doing similar things to what you guys have done and bringing the math and the design together.
Yeah, it's weird. We were weird. I felt like I was a weird kid. My favorite two classes in school were math and art. So,
yeah.
I think we always talked about how Tableau seemed like this perfect blend for us. Perfect blend of math and art, the two things we were always the best at, and we in a very nerdy way enjoyed, right? So
yeah, and it was something that was missing from our careers before, right? We both had we were technical, and we definitely used the math, but we were kind of missing that creative side. So
yeah, we haven't done trigonometry since we were in 10th grade.
Right,
so.
right. Yeah, except for that. Yeah, yeah, but finding data visualization and sort of opening up, this is math, this is tech, this is also creativity, right? There's no black and white rules on how you do things, right? There's always a bit of nuance, and that creativity is just part of what we love about this space, for sure.
Incredible. I mean, drawing transformers in your bedrooms as young children to trigonometry in 10th grade into what is like a real passion jobs for you both. Amazing.
Yeah, cool to be able to do it for a living. Yeah, and I mean, it took me 40 years to figure out what I wanted to do for a living.
Ken, almost 10 years ago, you wrote that first blog post, "The question is the question," where you joked, "Big data anyone? Hadoop, no SQL, new SQL, some SQL, any SQL," and then basically argued that we obsess way too much about the tools and not about the question. Now we've collectively moved away from big data hype and onto AI hype, looking at 2026 through the same lens. How can you explain to us how your thinking has evolved?
That's an interesting question, and I will say that typically we don't talk a lot about AI because it's just not our expertise, right? But I still think so many of those technologies you just mentioned were big things back then 10 years ago, right? But when's the last time you heard somebody talking about Hadoop or even the term big data, right? And and these technologies always go through these hype cycles, and there are these bits and pieces of that stuff that became real and sort of integrated into everything we do. And I do think that AI is sort of similar there, right? We have, particularly all the software companies and marketing and all these kinds of things, are talking about this being the solution to every single problem, right? There's just a whole bunch of stuff being thrown at us. AI. And I don't think that. I think some of it is really very real. And I think some of it is just going to sort of disappear, and some of it is just going to kind of flow into our normal business processes. It's going to become a part of every piece of software, and we're not even going to really think about it as this separate thing anymore. It's just going to be integrated into our lives. That said, I do think AI is a little bit different, right? In that blog, I talked about asking good questions. I still think that's important, right? We still have to know what questions we're trying to answer. And I think that's part of the problem right now, is that we're creating these technologies without really a goal of what they're trying to do. At least a lot of people are. So I think, still having like a good goal and knowing what the questions are really important. But there's also things like having good quality data. Like, this is really important for organizations that are trying to embrace AI, is if you don't have good quality data, you're going to have AI making decisions based on bad data, which has always been a problem. So there's so many of these like fundamental things we need to do from a data quality, data cleanliness standpoint that have always been there, right? And quite honestly, a lot of companies don't do a good job of those now, have never done a good job of them, and going to start implementing AI over top of those, and we're going to start getting these sort of bad decisions. So there are these like core fundamental things I think that we need to be continue to be considered that are fundamental to doing AI right. I do think AI is a little bit different than some of those things because it does feel like it's here to stay. And then this goal of having AI that can do anything that a human can do. Obviously, AI can start asking its own questions. So there is this sort of, maybe AI is starting to be able to answer, doing some of those things that humans could do before. I personally think it's all quite scary, especially when you think about, some of the long-term goals and the amount of money that is being put into these things. I think it's not only scary from a standpoint of our jobs being replaced, artificial general intelligence, right? Yeah, I think some of that starts to get into that sort of scary, world kind of scenario. So I'm definitely concerned about it, but I also think that there is this, there definitely is this component that I think it's for sure there's, it's not going away, right?
Truth is, but how could you imagine? We're not really getting in the, kind of the original question, but could you imagine work right now without that? I mean, I pretty much just use ChatGPT. Apparently you're like a novice if you only use ChatGPT, but it does damn near everything. I mean, I use it at home instead of Google. I just pop open ChatGPT, or I ask in Tableau questions. Oh my gosh, it's amazing at it. In fact, if we stay kind of close to that, what we talked about before is if you look at our views on our website over time, you would think they would go up. They did for a very long time until AI tools started being available. Now, I do know that when somebody asks a question, it probably says, well, according to the Flerlage Twins, this, and this. I hope that it does that. So there's some, I don't need credit. It would be great if ChatGPT gave credit, but but I think it is kind of interesting to see, views going up, and then all of a sudden they start it's not like a drop, but they start to go down. We were kind of curious what that was, and it certainly seems like it is due to AI. So, admittedly, I don't go to the community. If I have something I can't figure out in Tableau, the first place I go is ChatGPT, and it almost always gets the answer right. So I can't imagine doing work without it, but it is interesting how, Ken says it's scary. Well, in 5 years, do we have any views on our website? I mean,
Right.
they're seeing that information in a different way, but it's not, being tracked as a.
But the funny thing is
site.
that, it still needs us, right? The ChatGPT still needs us and other people that are writing about this stuff and sharing this information, because if we stop, right, then that doesn't have that source information, because it can't, at least right now, it can't figure that stuff out.
Now.
Right. You're talking about getting into the scary area. When it can open up Tableau and try a million different things to find a solution to a problem, right? That's when I start getting a little bit scared.
For sure. I mean, before Christmas, as things were winding up for the year, closing everything out, I listened to a podcast from Stephen Bartlett with his guest. I forget his last name, but his name's Tristan. He used to work for Google, was one of the ethicists, and now he runs his own business, a not-for-profit, talking about the dangers of what was social media previously and now the dangers of AI. And on the podcast, they spoke a lot around the conversations that are public versus the conversations that are private, and indicated that they believed that there were about 8 people who were really driving AGI ahead, and they believe that there's an sort of 80-20 probability. 80% it's going to do good, 20% it's going to wipe us all out. Now, I'm not saying that's true by any means, but it was kind of one of those moments that Sarah and I sat back and said, should we be having more of a conversation about this? And Sarah's just arrived back in the office yesterday, and one of the things we talked about was more podcasts that she's been listening to. So we like to hear lots of different opinions. And I think one of the things that she raised with me was around how do we get better at not just using ChatGPT for productivity, but actually thinking about what else we can do with it. Because
Yeah.
both of us agree we wouldn't have been able to set up our business and do a lot of what we do without the help of ChatGPT. So, for instance, with our podcast, we put our show notes through ChatGPT and we refine them and we make sure that we're doing things. Now, if we were doing that by self, we would be taking ourselves away from the day job as well. So, I think there's heaps of benefits in productivity, but AGI is creepy / scary. So your blog archive we talked about before, over 451 posts. That's pretty wild, guys. When you think about it, can you tell us what you've learnt about teaching at scale, what works, what doesn't, and how to decide which topics deserve a full deep dive versus just staying as a quick social media tip?
There's a
Well,
lot there. Ken?
yeah, I mean, I think one thing that, bears mentioning is that, people learn in different ways, right? And we've had people, we tend to write, right? And we write and, screenshots and sometimes every once in a while a video, but primarily we write because that's the way we learn, that when I don't want to go watch an hour-long video to learn how to do something because I want to be able to skip to the point. I want to be able to skip down, scan this, scan that, skip to the point, right? And it's hard to do that with video unless there's an description or whatever, right? So I prefer learning through text, and that's why we write that way, right? We write to that audience, and other people don't learn that way. Other people prefer videos, and we've had people say, oh, "Can you do videos?" And we're like, "Well, we've done a little bit, but it's just not our thing," right? And we refer them to people like Tableau Tim because he does amazing videos on all these different topics. So I think it's just an important thing to note. I don't know that when we got into this that we knew that we were good at teaching, but I remember when I first started doing like the trig stuff, having conversations on Twitter at the time, back when Twitter was actually used by people, and they were saying, "Oh, I could never do that. Right? I could never do that because I don't understand the math." And and that was what inspired Beyond Show Me. It was like, it's not super super complicated, right? It's not easy, but it's not super super complicated. So the goal was always sort of, how do we take these complex things, that if you learn trigonometry in high school, it's very abstract. You never really talk about why you would do these things, right? So the goal is always like, how do we take these abstract things or these complicated topics and make it digestible and easy to understand and applicable to something you actually want to use it for, right? And I don't know, somewhere along the way, I think we've realized that we are pretty decent at doing that. And then of course it's turned into, that we've done all that teaching on the blog, and I used to answer a lot of questions on the forums, and that was a method of teaching. Of course, now we teach training courses through Moxie Analytics as well, and those kinds of things.
When somebody says, and we've heard this a lot, and or feel blessed to be able to do it, but somebody says, "Hey, you guys are really great at taking something that's complicated and making it making it simple and easy to understand." So that's amazing. So I think one of the other questions is, how do we decide on what content that, kind of makes it or doesn't? I mean, we used to try and get 3 blogs a month. I think we're probably more around 2 a month now, and most of the Tableau use we use is at work. So much of the stuff just keeps coming up. 4 years ago, we were like, man, we're going to run out of content. And we just never do, because there's always challenges. There's always new features. There's always stuff that comes up. I mean, I know I've got 10 things I would like to write about. One thing I'd love to write about, but it's so niche that, like, would anybody even read about it? So I think generally it's kind of balancing would this be helpful to somebody else, or is it just so one-off that it wouldn't be important? But it is interesting how these things just keep coming up and working. Like, hey, this is how we solved it. This is how we solved things. I would say probably 80 or 90% of the blog posts, at least in the last year or two, are probably from experiences that we had at work. And we're consultants now, so we get to work with a bunch of different clients with a bunch of different problems. So I think that is like this constant like funnel of content.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at our blog over the last 10 years, the themes have changed a little bit. There was a period there where like every blog was about how to do something crazy, and built a crazy chart that, there were so many custom charts that I built over the years, with curves and things like that. And that was just because that was what I was playing with at the time. I thought it was cool. Right. And saw that there could be value in, turning into a template or something like that. Right. But, to Kevin's point, over the last couple of years, when we were spending all day, every day working with clients and building business dashboards, almost all of it is very focused on like real life scenario kinds of things that can take you, your dashboard from being good to being like, that extra bit of polish, right? Or solving some complicated problem where typically we'd be saying, well, it's just not possible to do that. Well, here's a way that you can do that. And we try to balance those as well by saying, if we're giving a technique that is a little bit weird or hacky, we try to give you the options of other options, but if you can't figure anything else out, here's something that will work, right? So yeah, but also that's what tends to drive our Tableau conference content as well. Because so we've done how to do cool stuff in Tableau since 2022. And so the last 4 years we've done
22. That is correct.
Yeah. How to do cool stuff in Tableau, and it's really just techniques and tips. And what I probably 100% of those have come.
Not 100.
Pretty
Don't
close.
Ever say 100. I'll give you 99%.
Percent of them come from our work, right? And we're like, it's always fun when you discover something new and call each other and like, hey, did you know you could do this? And you're always disappointed when he says, yeah, I do that all the time. Every once in a while, I was like, no, that's cool.
It's even cooler. I think it's even cooler when I have one particular client that knows her stuff. And we have a lot of clients that know their stuff, but one particular one, I've learned so much from her. Like she keeps, did you know you could do this? No, this is so cool. I've been using Tableau forever. How do I not know this? So that's a really cool. And and we use other people's stuff all the time. So
yeah.
Well, I know your presentation from TC25 was the one I think I woke up at some ungodly hour to watch live because I really wanted to kind of be part of the room, and excited to say that we will be there for this year.
I was going to ask.
Yeah.
Hey, awesome.
Yeah. So we'll be as close to the front as we can, cheering.
I hope that they'll have us back. Sure. Yeah. And we've got way more silliness coming this year. We built the silly part. We haven't built the presentation. We usually have the presentation built like 5 months ahead. But we had the opening act built for about a couple months now. So we got 8 months ahead of time. So, and Keith may or may not be back. When we first started doing presentations, I just remember my brain going, this has to be fun in some way, shape, or form, right? I've seen so many presentations that just aren't fun. I'm not talking about Tableau people. I'm just talking about just in general. It's like fun is like this so like key element to making people want to be there and want to listen and be engaged, right? So I don't know how it ever got to be what it was. I think it started off with the ultimate favorites thing with the UFC fighters.
I mean, it's definitely grown and gotten more absurd.
Where are you guys hanging out at the moment?
What a tricky question. It stinks that Twitter is no longer a thing for our community. We still post, blog posts on Twitter. And
you do. I don't even post.
You don't even bother. Well, I do. I get, like we used to get average 70, 80 likes on a blog post posted in a week. And now it'd be like 5 or 6. It was such a cool area to chat with people. And now I don't think that area really exists. The majority of my time on social media is spent on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
It just was more like professional posts that are this long. That's just not my thing. And Twitter was like, hey, things are short and sweet and we can read them quickly and move on. And
have conversations, like
conversations, they just don't happen.
LinkedIn doesn't work with that.
It felt like there was this couple thousand people that were like really hardcore about data viz and Tableau on Twitter. And now it's tens of thousands of professionals, and some of which are really into it and others aren't. I just don't see that space. The Tableau Slack is I see a lot of things going on there. But there's so many channels and stuff, it's a little bit difficult to kind of keep up with what's going on. So so we don't really have a great answer. I wish there was this great place, but LinkedIn is where we spend most of our time and have most of our interactions.
Yeah. A lot of that is largely just because, of marketing, doing marketing for the company and stuff like that. So a lot of that is that's driving us to LinkedIn is there. I mean, I think we would love to find that Twitter alternative where we can engage with the community better.
Yeah, and I know people were moving to Blue Sky for a while. I mean, it's just nothing. There's just nothing there. That's a post. I still post that, and it's 1 or 2 likes on it. So it's a third of Twitter at this point. So it's unfortunate. So LinkedIn, at least it's kind of in one place, I guess, versus spread out. But yeah, it's unfortunate.
It's really the same for us as well. We spend the majority of our time in LinkedIn. One thing you may want to try or consider is, as well as doing the blogging on your website, restructuring those blog posts. So you need to restructure it because of SEO, but restructuring them as articles. And articles are one of the areas in LinkedIn that you'll get higher engagement with as well. So might be something to consider, especially if you're finding that the views are sort of stabilizing on the blog side. If you've got both coming through, it may also just help build that following.
Yeah, and if we do that, quite often it'll be maybe more condensed, and then we can always put a link out to the blog for more.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's so much better than the posts because you can actually format it. There's a lot of formatting that can go into the articles, and it gives you a lot more flexibility.
So one of the blogs I know a lot of people have bookmarked over the years is the 20 uses for Tableau level of detail calculations, our favorite LODs. It gets referenced a lot. So can you explain to us what you were trying to accomplish with that blog and which one you think had the biggest impact?
Hey, Ken, before Ken, that's Ken's blog, but before we talk about that is, according to Blogger, only our third most popular blog post, which I would expect that to be number 1. You mentioned it before, Sarah. DataFam colors is the number 1, and you actually mentioned this one too. Oddly, I have no idea how, but the transparent color hex code is oddly number 2.
Yeah,
followed by LODs.
Yeah.
What's that? Oh, you're responsible for the several 100,000 views on it.
No. Well, so that reminds me of when you came to JLL and you presented to our team and you were talking about transparency. And I feel like you guys have had so many great ideas over the years. And it was the one thing that I could give back to you was the transparent.
That's right. Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You're in that blog post. Well, it's number 2. So thank you. Yes, yay! I'm sorry. I completely forgot you're 100% right.
It's interesting when you look at the Google search results, because we just get a lot of, people just search for transparent hex code and we end up on that top 10 list. So somehow along the way, and they're probably going to it and they're like, this is Tableau. I don't need that. Although they probably get what they need from using that, right? So,
all right, here it is, just to make sure, since I forgot. It says in the very first paragraph, I was talking about transparent sheets, and Fee Gordon mentioned the transparent hex code. What? In the big question marks. This, of course, piqued my interest, and we started digging in. So, yeah. So Fee, so let's look at those stats one more time. So, since we talked about that, let's look at our top blog post. Number 1, data fam colors written by Ken. Number 2, transparent color written by Fiona Gordon. How I know her as Fee. I don't know who's this Fiona person. Number 2 written by Fee.
Now.
It's Crocker now. I got married.
Okay. Well, now I'm even more confused. Fiona Crocker is like not any human I know. So number 1
just
by
so
Ken.
I can make it. It's just so I can make it into the US.
Okay. All right. Number 1, data fam colors by Ken. Number 2, transparent color by Fee. Number 3, LODs by Ken. Number 4, if statements by Ken. So yeah, pretty much I'm just a big loser on the blog post front. So even somebody doesn't even write for our blog post has number 2 on there. So thank you.
Maybe you just get Ken to publish it next time, when you've written it.
Maybe
my name on it.
Well, I mean, you can't be first at everything out of the two of you. If you're more highly rated in terms of the number of favorites on Tableau Public, you can't also be the writer as well.
I want to be, though. You see, I'm far more competitive than he is. So I want
to say, though, when I first started.
Oh, here we go. Here comes his excuse.
There was no such thing as half of my best work was done before favorites even existed. So not really a fair comparison. We could talk about views on Tableau Public if you want.
Oh, because you hit on Reddit once. That doesn't count. Because you got a million views on one viz in 3 days on Reddit.
I'm just saying.
No,
you can make your argument for your measure. That's the best. You think's the best.
The best one is favorites on Tableau Public, and I got you edged out.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us about your favorite posts? Like, what's the posts that stand out the most for you, and describe why they're important to you?
I'll tell you mine, because, well, when I first started writing, it was on, as Ken mentioned earlier, on kevinflerlage.com. It was a couple of years after Ken had written some stuff, and I came up with this technique that I didn't even know was really a thing. And it was this, even though it probably isn't hugely popular for work, but it was, I called it no polygons, or you were able to do some kind of crazy stuff. And the reason it was the first post that I wrote that got like some serious action. People started creating visualizations. I would bet hundreds of them, on Tableau Public off of that. But one thing I remember about it the most, and we talked about Karen Henson, that one person you remember doing that one thing that was important. I remember getting a comment from Jonathan Drummey, who Jonathan Drummey was like, and still is like the godfather of Tableau. And he said, wow, what an easy way to do something really, really, really hard. And I'm like, Jonathan Drummey, yes. Like it was this like big, I think I'd only been using Tableau for 5 or 6 months at that point. So it was like this big, huge win for me. And I would say the other thing is when I shared that Tableau, you mentioned a couple of times, Sarah, but the Tableau chart catalog, that was a lot of work, even though I didn't actually create any of the visualizations in it. It was a lot of work because I got approval from every single author, right? And I think on Twitter that got like 600 or 700 likes in, a day or two. It was the first time something went, that's not viral when we're talking about, shoes or something like that, but it is viral when you're talking about data viz and Tableau. But it was like, wow, this is actually really important to people. And for a while, it was the second most favorite viz on. I've been surpassed. It's the third most popular viz.
Oh, really?
Most favorited. Yeah.
Well, interesting fact there. It was my polygon my no polygon
Yes.
chart that you used on
Yes,
there.
yes,
so I
yes,
did
yes.
read your blog,
Yes,
and better
yes.
than that, you selected mine. It was one of the Makeover Mondays, I think.
Yeah, I remember now. Yeah. See, now you guys are just, I've forgotten all this stuff, from 6, 7, 8 years ago. And so, yeah, we're all very intertwined. Yes, it is. It was. I remember you were one of the first ones that did it, I think, because I remember being really excited, like, oh, people actually think this is kind of cool. So awesome. Yay.
Yeah, there we go.
Ken,
And what about you,
you?
Ken? What's one of your favorite blogs of the past?
I mean, maybe the most meaningful ones, to Kevin's point, it's probably the Beyond Show Me ones, I think, because that was probably like the first time I actually started like teaching. I think prior to that, it was like sharing something I built, right? So, Beyond Show Me was 3 different posts. It was post 1 was about like just the basics of using like X and Y coordinates. Number 2 was about trig. And number 3, wasn't really necessary, but it was about like some more advanced stuff. It was my attempt to take these concepts that were, as we talked about before, that are kind of complicated and that people found scary, and try to make it easier to understand. And I think a lot of people found value out of it, and hopefully still do. And so that for me, I think, that was also though for me, like, oh, I kind of am okay about teaching with teaching this stuff. And not only that, I actually have some things to share, because I was only maybe a year into using Tableau at that point. So, that's when I think my blog at that time started to shift from me just sharing some, cool things or analyses or whatever, to actually just teaching stuff.
You have to say, like, the Sankey stuff is pretty.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
and
if somebody said, the Flerlage Twins, and then people were like, the Sankey guys, right? Even though it's a Sankey guy,
right,
singular.
And that started off with me trying to follow up. It was a blog on Jeff Schaefer's site, written by Olivier, who had come up with this idea of using polygons. And amazingly, Olivier is like got to be one of the most brilliant people. It was like the first thing he ever did in Tableau. And
really, I didn't know that.
It is a work of art, like the math and all this stuff that he put together to make. It was one of the first things he did in Tableau. So he's a genius. But trying to follow it and just being like, it took me forever to figure out how it actually worked, and build all the calculations. And even after I did that, I didn't understand it. And it was like, I at that point was pretty skilled in Tableau. I think I was probably a Visionary by then, or Zen Master at the time. And I was like, I just want to make this easier for people, and sort of just turned it into this plug and play template that a lot of people start to use to this day. And then, of course, people came, well, can we do it with multi-levels? Can we do it this and that? And, and so it turned into, I think we've probably got, oh boy, probably 10 different templates out there. And the last thing we did with it was totally start from scratch and rebuild it to correct with this one sort of key flaw that existed in it. But yeah, so I think those Sankey blog posts were definitely another one that kind of got us people to be aware of who we are, and and it's something we're kind of known for.
They're not in our top 20 according to Blogger, Ken. But
yeah, a lot of those stat knows are
that.
Really,
but also, it's probably because there's like 15 different. The views are spread across like 15 different Sankey blog posts. You add them all up, they'd probably be number 1.
But the other reason it's not as popular a set of posts on there is just, the things that actually are popular are the things that more people need. And these tend to be the things we're writing more of now. The things that are applicable to just about everybody. Almost everybody's going to have to learn LODs at some point. One of our top blog posts is if statements, right? Everyone needs to learn how to do if statements if you don't know how to do that, right? And things like pivoting and, better ways to do legends and stuff like that are just so, they're just things that are just have a much broader audience, and things like Sankey's and other more complex charts just definitely a smaller audience. So those aren't going to necessarily appear on the top posts.
Yeah, but they're fun.
Yeah, they are fun.
And again, we've come back to it in a really nerdy way. It's fun. It's fun to do trigonometry in your spare time.
When there's a purpose for it, yes. Although I loved it in 10th grade when I loved trigonometry.
I don't remember.
One last question, guys, before we start to wrap up. Looking back across all of the Tableau years, can you tell us your favorite memory of working together? A specific moment where you both walked away thinking, this is why we do this.
I wish there. Can you think of like one singular moment, Ken?
I mean, I remember one moment. I remember, Kev, what year was it? Probably 2019 when, so the Visi Awards, they have this Michael Christiani Leadership Award. And Kev, you were still kind of new. You're only, a year and a half, 2 years into it, and you won that award. And I remember just getting like really choked up and just feeling really proud of you. And going and giving you a hug. And that was, it was sort of a special moment. So that's one.
I love that. I mean, the Visis are such an amazing thing for the community to recognize one another. I know that I treasure mine as well, but in the earlier days before they were so popular, and I think that it definitely, I can understand why that was a special moment for both of you.
Yeah, they really, I mean, and they just do such a great job. I love the fact that, Visionaries aren't eligible, right? So you tend to learn about these people who are doing great stuff that maybe don't have as big a name at that point.
Right.
Yeah. So another thing, another memory I think is special is this year doing our presentation at the Tableau conference. Our session, how to do cool stuff. Like, as I said before, we've done it for 4 years in a row. Hopefully we'll do it again this year. And, it's always been a popular session. We typically do 2 sessions because there's just not enough space. One year they asked us to do a 3rd session. And we're like, two's enough. But this year, I mean, they gave us the keynote stage, not technically a keynote, a super session, but it was the keynote space. I think there was room for, 5,000 people, and it was full. And so that just felt like, we were right. You know what I mean? It was so much fun to be able to do it with, my identical twin brother, and to actually go up there and to do we did exactly what we would have done if it was a stage of 100 people, right? The same sort of nonsense and fun, and and we give Tableau so much credit for like allowing us to just do what we wanted to do, right? Just let us be ourselves. So that was definitely a pretty cool moment to be able to share that with Kevin. How about one more? One more. Are you
gonna put tears in my eyes 3 times in a row now, or just 2? Okay.
The third one is just like us when we said to each other, like, why are we working these like regular jobs? Like, why are we not like doing this as our job and doing it together? And us making that decision to do it. And then meeting, we had known Serena Roberts before, but, us having those conversations with Serena and her business partner at the time and talking through it and just knowing that this was like the perfect fit for us. So that sort of joining Moxie, which definitely the best career decision I've ever made. I think Kevin would agree with that as well. So that was a super cool moment as well to actually say, yeah, we're working together and we're available, we're available, right? So
I don't think I can add to that. So
incredible. And I think, like I said, I woke up super early to catch you at TC25, and I would rank it as in the top 3 with Devs on Stage and IMViz as the things to watch when you're at Tableau conference. And looking forward to, I hope, seeing it live this year.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you.
Ken, Kevin, thank you both for hanging out with us and for, frankly, a decade of doing the hard work in public so the rest of us can stand on your shoulders.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it.
If you love this conversation as much as we did, don't forget to subscribe, hit follow, and leave us a review and share this episode with your fellow DataFam members.
We'll include links to the Flerlage Twins blog, their incredible Tableau public profiles, and their socials in the show notes below. I highly recommend going on and spending some quality time on their blog if you haven't already.
Until next time, keep doing cool stuff with your data, stay curious, and thank you for joining us here on unDUBBED, where we are unscripted, uncensored, and undeniably data. Bye.
Bye.